Afternoon, everybody. It's great to have so many people joining this call today. We have many participants, which is always good to see. And so we're just going to wait for one more minute and just let everyone have a chance to get in. We have got the chat open. So if you are feeling up to it, please introduce yourself in the chat and say hi to your fellow participants. We will have some interaction later on during the day as well. So we're going to hear from our speakers first, and then we'll have a Q&A session and a bit of interaction later in the day. So right, let's get cracking, because we've got a lot to get through, and as people come in, they will be able to catch up to where we are. So welcome everybody again, and let's get going. All right, so just to give you a quick overview, the National Circular Economy Stakeholder Dialogue series is being hosted by the African Circular Economy Network and Circular South Africa for the GIZ and the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment, DFFE, which falls under the Green Economy Transformation Project. The project's objective is to support decision makers in the selected partner countries of Argentina, Costa Rica, Indonesia, and South Africa in the endeavor to develop and implement an enhanced political framework for an inclusive green economy. We've had the privilege of leading these webinars so far, and this is the third of the 4 online webinars, and we will be ending in a wonderful in-person networking event, but I'll leave my colleague to take us through that. So welcome everybody, this is the program for today, and I'm not going to dwell too much on that. We are going to hand over to our to the DFFE to just welcome us all today before we get stuck into the actual presentations. So just to hand over to our DFFE colleagues, Carter was going to be presenting an opening, but I just want to double check if Carter is here. Or Janita.
Yes, I am here.
Carter, wonderful. Hello, how are you?
I'm well, thanks, and how are you? Good afternoon.
Thank you, Carter. Over to you. I won't. So welcome, Mr. Carter Mokoena. He's the Chief Director of Chemicals and Waste Quality Specialist Monitoring Services at the DFFE. Thank you, Carter. Over to you.
Good afternoon, colleagues, and thanks a lot, Sally, and for the opportunity. It's a Friday, busy schedules, but I'm happy to be here and also appreciative of the same gesture by the colleagues who made time to join our session today. It's a series of circular economy sessions that we are conducting, and we're looking forward to the discussions, focusing on a number of areas today, largely manufacturing. There has been a number of engagements on different topics, and we hope that you'll find the discussions quite fruitful and also assisting in a number of areas where you will be or you are currently busy already implementing circular economy. And as part of the opening remarks, it's safe to indicate that we have the National Waste Management Strategy for South Africa providing a policy overview, policy direction in terms of circular economy implementation in South Africa. And building onto that, we have initiatives that are underway, one of them being the development of the circular economy action plan, a process for which we are busy going through the supply chain processes to source a professional service provider who will be developing that circular economy action plan for us. And it's safe to indicate that that is at national level. Together with that is the implementation of circular economy initiatives at different levels, small, medium, micro enterprises, as well as big corporates level. So I'm coming out of another meeting, and apologies for the back-to-back meeting, but largely at the meeting, I was reminded that, no, in fact, in Gauteng, the industrial symbiosis projects or program are some of the initiatives through which we are implementing circular economy. So there are those number of best practice initiatives that are taking place in different provinces, and we are actually looking at those initiatives becoming building blocks of our implementation of circular economy. And in the Africa region, South Africa is co-chairing the African Circular Economy Alliance. And there we have a number of areas that are focus areas that are low-hanging fruit opportunities for us to implement circular economy. Hence, we refer to them as the 5 big bets of circular economy. And the area of manufacturing is quite an important one. And linked to that, there is a number of sectors that are busy looking at how best can they position themselves for any circular economy related initiatives. For instance, the interest in enterprises and companies that are busy already implementing extended producer responsibility schemes, because we see EPR implementation as one of our examples of circular economy implementation, and they come from a number of sectors that are already involved in implementing circular economy, and largely looking at it from EPR point of view. There is legislation as well that enables that. There's also economic instruments that enables that, either through the levies that are being collected. If you look at the waste tire space or plastic bag levy, where we have levies collected by the receiver of revenue. On the other hand, in our implementation of extended producer responsibility schemes, economic instruments, including those that are fees collected by the producer responsibility organizations. But together with this, because the instruments will be incentives and disincentives, there are measures as well for non-compliances in areas where there's non-compliance that is identified, which would strongly want to discourage, but encouraging more compliance as part of our transitioning to circular economy. So there are these multiple initiatives and interventions that we are looking at, and we're looking forward also to the outcome of this process, the engagements that will be taking place, and also looking at today's session to say what do we add on what we have learned from the other sessions as well. And hence appreciate the opportunity to be part of the discussion, and looking forward to the discussion as well, and wish everyone all the best during the discussions. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Gata. It's always great having you with us and in these types of forums, and look forward to the discussions. Thanks for the insights with what's happened in the previous meetings you were attending as well. All really, really great. And So I'm going to, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Nobuntu to take us through the overview of the Stakeholder Dialogue series and to run through that. So over to you, Nobuntu. I'll help with the presentation.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Sally, and a good afternoon to everyone. And we made it to the end of the week and to the third dialogue. That is the Circular Economy National Stakeholder Dialogue. I'm just going to quickly run through the objectives of the dialogue, and I think picking up from what Ntate Mokoena has indicated with respect to developments in terms of the creation of a circular economy action plan. There's definitely a very clear intent for these dialogues, and the overall intent is not to just have talks for the sake of talking and having engagements, but rather to turn these talks and these engagements into actions that we can carry through in terms of redeveloping and revitalizing some of the industries, and more especially manufacturing, because it is a cross-cutting sector and a very critical one to South Africa's economy, and one that is highly impacted, I guess, with regard to the developments, the global developments when it comes to supply chain disruptions and what we've seen in the previous weeks. So just to give you a more specific idea of what our objectives are, of the dialogues, they are to initiate cross-sectoral discussions and foster knowledge exchange about the circular economy. And when I give you the run-through of the sectors that we've spoken about, you'll see that our intent is to foster collaboration with what we would deem to be unusual suspects. So if you have never had the opportunity to engage with other sectors through these dialogues, we definitely are encouraging you to connect with the unusual suspects in terms of the cross-cutting sectors, as well as the key sectors that we've had discussions around. Our objective is also to raise awareness and share information about circular economy principles and interventions that promote the circular economy as a development tool for South Africa. And we all know the state of art in terms of South Africa's economy, the inequality, and taking from the previous work by the CSIR and specifically Linda Godfrey, the perspective or the perception is that the circular economy framework does present a lot of development opportunities for our economy, and more importantly, inclusive development opportunities. Our third objective is to bring together a diverse set of stakeholders around the different sectors to provide a collaborative platform around circularity. As indicated, we really encourage you to connect. A lot of people have introduced themselves in the chat as well. Please connect on LinkedIn and continue the discussion outside of this, even amongst each other. And also, it's to obtain feedback and input from stakeholders regarding the needs of regulatory or policy support for circularity. As you've seen that we have the DFFE in the room, we've got key stakeholders who are in positions where they can possibly influence or drive or enable certain policy actions towards advancing circularity in the economy. So it's important that when we are done, the objective is to collate all this feedback and to package it in a way that it can inform or become a tool to inform what sort of actions are going to would be useful in terms of advancing a circular economy in South Africa. Thank you, Sally. And then, as indicated, these are the sectors that we focused on throughout the webinars. We started off with agriculture, we moved on to mining. Today, we are discussing manufacturing. And the last webinar, which is going to be on the 24th of October, will speak to the renewable energy space, which is an emerging and a growing sector. And then our last event will be on the 14th November, and it will be a culmination of all the webinars into an in-person event where we can actually network one-on-one, and we can obviously, hopefully deep dive into some of the sectors, and more importantly, I think, create those networks amongst the different sectors, and also have an opportunity to discuss some of the cross-cutting issues that affect all of these sectors, similarly to water scarcity, similarly to energy as well. Thank you. And then I think without further ado as well and wasting time, we will be participating in our first poll of the day, and it's one of the interactive tools that we engage with throughout the presentation. And I think for me, the importance of this specific question is to sort of establish a common language of understanding, because I think we cannot start to talk about solutions and opportunities if we don't have a common understanding of what circularity is. So I would encourage you to please participate, enter your answer in terms of what your current understanding of circularity is. Thank you very much. Over to you, Sally.
Thanks, Nabantu. Yeah, fabulous introduction and overview of the dialogue series. And we've had a lot of fun so far, and we've had a lot of incredible engagement. So we're hoping that this particular engagement is just as good. So we do encouraging, you know, for you to contribute. So use the chat function and please participate in the polls. So Katerina, let me know when we're happy to move on.
I think we can give people.
Yep.
I think we can give people a little bit more time, because it seems
Sure.
people are maybe a bit slow end of the week, which is completely fine. We have 4 answers so far. So guys, maybe also grab a cup of coffee. Kelly, you can't seem to reshare. I can't, if I end the poll now, I can't, like, then people can't enter it. So sorry, I just need to let people enter it now, because I can see now answers coming in. Sorry about that, Kelly, but otherwise you can also type your answer in the chat.
Yes, I was thinking the same thing. Maybe I'll put it in here as well, and then you can just answer that. There we go.
Getting 12 answers, but we have 51 people online.
Don't be shy, guys.
Let's crack the 20.
We've got a real diversity of people in the room, which is really great. So start getting, if you get some questions along the way when you hear some of the presentations, please just jot them down so that you can bring them up when we have the interactive session.
Okay, I think I am going to close the poll. I see that people are still typing in. So maybe just give you another 10 seconds and then we can close the poll and I will share it from my side. I'm going to end it now. Okay, let me just check the results on my end, because this is a tricky one. Maybe, Sally, I'm just going to replace the sharing setting with mine. So it should show my screen now. I'm sorry, unfortunately, this function in Zoom isn't very user-friendly, especially if you're wearing glasses. So let me try to zoom in a little bit. I hope this is very obvious now. Okay, I'm just going to scroll down for a bit. Okay, effective management of national resources. That's very nice. We focused heavily on design, love it. We still see a lot of waste, obviously key and critical component, especially if we also speak about a manufacturing sector. Ah, love the biomimicry. It's about a holistic approach, a full life cycle approach, regenerative use. Okay, and then resource security. Perfect. I think this is quite a lot of great answers. Okay, then let me stop sharing and then I'll hand over to you again, Sally.
Awesome, thank you. Okie dokes, right. Except now I've lost my banner.
It might be on your second screen. It usually disappears somewhere in between.
Yeah, just give me a sec, guys. This technology all worked before. And we didn't, okay, so there we go. Yeah, there we go. All right. Okay, we should be back in business and you should be seeing the right screen.
Perfect.
Okay, good. No, I'm not seeing the right screen. Please hold. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do now is just take you through, the fundamentals of what is circularity. We talk about this today and we use the term so commonly in everyday language now, but what does it actually mean? And I want to take us back to maybe the beginning, because I think we're all kind of on the same page about if the economy keeps growing in the current way, that simply doesn't have enough raw materials, whether we have a circular economy or not. So I think we're all kind of on a similar page in this thinking. And we have seen this picture before in multiple ways of depicting the linear economy, where we essentially have a linear economy that we take, make, and we waste with a mindset of just infinite resources at the end of the day. And waste is really, it's a human concept. Nature doesn't know waste. Nature waste equals food. And, we've just come to accept that our economy is built on a wasteful production of goods and services. And we've just come to accept that waste, pollution, and resource depletion is an unavoidable consequence of our modern society and economy. But is it really? One of the, I really enjoy this depiction. There's a lot of information on it, but essentially, Earth Overshoot Day marks the date when our demand for ecological resources and services in a given year actually exceeds what the Earth can regenerate in that year. So for an example, in 2024, the global Earth Overshoot Day landed on the 1st of August. And we keep maintaining this deficit by using stocks of ecological resources and accumulating waste like carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Can any of you spot where South Africa is and on what day we basically used up our ecological reserves? I'll give you a clue. It's towards the bottom of the screen, middle of the year. So essentially 20th of June, we coincide with Argentina. And you can see all of those ahead of us, how quickly ecological reserves are used up. It's quite a sobering picture and one that really makes you think a little bit more. So what is the circular economy? And simplistically, when considering the materials and resources, there are three essentially guiding principles. And if these are the only ones that you remember, that's absolutely fine, because these are kind of, really the base principles. It's all about designing out waste and pollution, keeping products and materials in use at their highest utility, regenerating natural systems. And if you could just remember those three, and even though these are just thinking about materials and resources, you can actually think about them a little bit differently as well. So in terms of regenerate natural systems, as humans, we're part of that natural system as well, so social systems too. But I digress. Let me take you through what's another diagrammatic expression of what a circular economy can look like. So the UNEP has created another type of diagram, which follows on from a linear approach to kind of explain how we can rework our linear economy. And essentially, this linear economy is really taking us through extraction, production, use, and end of use. Yep, we know this one. But with the circular economy, we start building circularity in with reduced demand and reuse of materials and products. So you can see these inner flows, and the closer you are, the closer the cascade, the better for the system. So when we start looking at the bigger cascade, if we add in things like repair of products, refurbishment of products, and the remanufacture of products to the system, those are these loops here. And you can see those are the next action that we should take. Following on from repair, refurbish, and remanufacture, repurposing and recycling of products and materials can assist to avoid additional extraction of virgin materials. Just pause for a second and just see where recycling is. It's often the first thing we think about, but it's definitely not first on a circular value chain, if you like. So what can we do upstream? We can design products and materials that enable them to flow through the system more efficiently and to be reused more effectively. So we can actually design for repairability and design for remanufacture, etc. So this particular diagram is obviously very material focused. We must also remember that this system is based on natural cycles of energy, water, biodiversity, etc. All of our economy, everything that we do is actually based on our environmental system, our ecological systems that support us. And it's also within a social context, people, us. So we mustn't forget about this. And often we think of circularity from a waste perspective, and that's not the only part. So I just want to present another look at the butterfly diagram, which many of you may have seen already as well. And what is different about this one is that the humanosphere, or people, are directly included within this particular diagram. So very much on the technical technosphere in terms of the technical nutrients of the diagram and the biological nutrients, but also fundamentally with people and social context. I just want to bring this quickly in, and I don't want to take too much time because I'm eating into the experts' time here. This particular diagram is around the global material extraction and just showing how our extraction is increasing over time. So the annual global extraction of material has grown from 30 billion tons in 1970 to 95 billion tons in 2020. It's expected to reach 106 this year. By 2060, the growth rate is expected to increase by another 60%. This is really massive. If we have a look at those material flows, you can see this particular diagram just shows, and it might be a little confusing, but essentially what it's saying is this very thin loop at the bottom here, that is the recycling of secondary materials going back into the system. And yes, that is just from a material perspective, and it's only just on the recycling side. It's not looking at reuse, etc. But this is showing that these types of studies are starting to show the gaps between in our system and the fact that we're not reusing what we should. Everyone's heard potentially of the circularity gap report, and our South African economy is 6% circular. From a global perspective, they're reporting 7.2%, which has actually declined. So since 2018, the report of the circularity gap report was 9%. It's now come down to 7.2%. And in terms of South Africa, in 2017, we're about 6% circular in terms of our material flows. So with about 94% resource inefficiencies that we need to target, and we really do have an opportunity to create value across all of the sectors in South Africa. And this is why the sector webinar approach that we've taken has been focused on the 4 sectors that we have, because they all cross over and they're all interconnect. Through resource efficiencies, we can assist to increase global competitiveness, improve resource security. We need to separate economic development from energy and water needs. So how do we use energy and water more appropriately? Create fair and equitable work opportunities. Obviously, everyone wants a good bottom line. So looking at how we can increase those profits, improve living conditions and health, and direct environmental benefits. So the manufacturing sector is it is vital. And however, in South Africa's perspective, its contribution to GDP has declined over 20% in 1993 to only 13% in 2020. The manufacturing sector has faced re-industrialisation over the past decades. This is also happening globally. In South Africa, it employs around 1.7 million people, which is 11% of the workforce, and that's in the formal economy. The country's increasing reliance on imports creates massive challenges internally. So there are challenges. It's resource intensive. From a social perspective, declining sector means there's fewer work opportunities. Environmental sector perspective, water, energy, and material efficiency and contributions to greenhouse gases. Economically, there's competition with cheap imports and due to our trade policy. So how can circularity change this? And through efficiency, refurbishment, repair, social, we've definitely got the skills. Think about the textile sector that used to be massive in South Africa, and through design. I'm racing through these because I'm very cognizant of the time. So how can circularity change this? Again, is really understanding what we need in South Africa, the supply chain resilience, building additional work opportunities, and through manufacturing, we believe that there is definitely scope for remanufacture, refurbishment. How do we strengthen our supply chains? So we'll delve into that in the next few presentations, and I'm going to stop there for now and head straight into the next poll, which is which circularity principles have you applied in your field so far? So we've added a fourth one in here, and that is to the benefiting all members of society. And that's because the three principles are great, but they are really focused on materials, essentially focused on materials. And so we really wanted to bring in society into the principles. And I see we've got some comments in the chat as well, which is great. Thanks, Kelly, for answering the question in the chat. How are we doing on that poll?
We have around 29 people fill it in.
That's
So I think, yeah, we can maybe just ask the rest as well to fill it in. I unfortunately can't fill it in on my side.
And because I've sped through, and apologies for speeding through, but we've got us back on track. So Shahed, you don't have to race through anything.
Perfect. I think we can also close the poll. It seems that
Great.
a lot of people have filled it in.
Thank you. All right. Katrina, are you going to present, or can I introduce Dr. Shahed?
I think you can introduce, but also I think, again, what we see is a nice split to previous polls, but this time around, actually regenerating natural systems isn't so strongly linked as we saw in the previous webinars, which I found quite interesting because previously it was quite an equal split across the different principles. But yeah, that's something definitely to keep in mind as well. Thank you so much, everyone, for filling it in.
Excellent. Thank you very much. All right, so I'd like to introduce Dr. Shahed Fazlidin, and he's going to be talking to us about some of those sectoral challenges and opportunities. He holds both an MSc Engineering and an BSc Engineering and MSc Engineering degree in the field of metallurgical engineering. He obtained his PhD Engineering in Material Science from the University of Leeds in 2002. Prior to joining the CSIR, he worked for several other companies, starting his career with Eskom Technology Group in 1995. He was seconded to the Eskom PBMR program in 1999, where he played a significant role in the engineering design and development of the PBMR reactor core structures. In 2011, he joined the De Beers group of companies at the Oppenheimer Diamond Research Labs at the Element 6 plant in Springs, where he led various production development projects with notable improvements in product portfolio, productivity, and profitability of the company. He currently holds a position as research group leader within the CSIR manufacturing cluster, and he served his role since September 2017. So welcome, Dr. Shahed. I look forward to your presentation very much, and immense amount of experience here. So please keep your questions for Dr. Fazlidin, and then, yeah, thank you. over to you.
Thank you very much, Sally. Thanks for that introduction. I sound more impressive than I really am. But thanks to those participating. I really appreciate the opportunity to participate in the dialogue. I think it's a very important topic. And I think following the study we did a few years ago, which I had the opportunity to participate in, this is a nice follow-up from that. So I'll just start sharing my slides. Let me get into share mode. Okay. Apologies if I'm a little slow. I'm not that used to Zoom. Teams has become the sort of benchmark, I think. Can you see my screen?
We can. We can see if you could just put it into presenter mode. There we go. That's perfect. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks. So topic is stated there, looking at challenges and opportunities within the South African circular economy. I think one can't do that without looking globally at what the trends and benchmarks are and so forth. I think we have a long way to go, but there's promising opportunities and developments on the horizon. Just the outline of the talk, a quick snapshot of the circular economy concept. I think you touched on it already, Sally. Then moving on to sectoral challenges and opportunities. Try to package this along a few themes to keep a certain context. It is a very broad, topic, if you like. And then looking at some policy frameworks and incentives, mainly stemming from industry master plans. Then moving on to some circular economy interventions and opportunities these present. A strong focus on the greenhouse gas observatory development for the SA foundry sector. This is something being done internally within CSR. I have a bit of a privilege to work with some of the colleagues who are involved in this, and they shared some of their slides on this, which I will present. And then a little bit of a view on the automotive and renewable energy technology sector, and some conclusions. So I think we're all quite familiar with these loops, showing the circular economy concept. This is one around manufacturing. Importantly, on the right, strong emphasis on design. I think this design emphasis is increasing to try right at the beginning or the onset of product development and manufacturing to factor in circular economy principles and product life cycles, recyclability, remanufacturability, and so forth. Key thing is to integrate value and quality, embed durability, serviceability, and so forth. So looking at the sectoral challenges and circular economy opportunities from a policy frameworks and incentives point of view, I'll focus on the two industry master plans, steel and aluminium. The aluminium one is fresh out of the development sort of phase. And I don't think most of the colleagues here might not have seen some of this information, which could be quite interesting. So before I jump to the master plans, just some background perspective on the circular economy challenges and opportunities these present. Globally, if we look, and you'll note from the presentation, when I put this together, I realized keeping an emphasis on CO2 emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, quite important. It's a very useful indicator and to use as a basis for which to compare lots of different aspects of the circular economy. So I'm sure people have seen similar, data, but just to recap and to emphasize to those who are not so familiar, what you're seeing on the left is if we implement a number of circular economy interventions, like waste reduction, product reuse, materials looping or recirculation, this study predicts a 40% reduction in global greenhouse gas emissions, stemming only from steel, aluminium, cement, and plastics, which are major emitters. That's about half of the net zero target to 2050. On the right, 8 materials, if you look at it, are responsible for 20% of global greenhouse gas emissions, 95% of water use, and so forth. So material preservation, recirculation, and product reuse, etc., is extremely important to the circular economy, development and establishment of that within the South African economy as well. Looking further at sectoral challenges and opportunities, some of the slides are a bit detailed. I won't go through all of that. I decided to include a lot of points here. People can look at this later, inform their own thinking, and to encourage more discussion around some of these points. The key issue here with the South African manufacturing sector is it's still strongly dependent on resource extraction for exports, and by virtue of this fact remains a major contributor to national greenhouse gas emissions, despite the decline in the sector over the last few decades. The greenhouse gas inventory shows a strong reliance on fossil fuels. Mining and metals are major consumers, contributing to the high carbon intensity, particularly in exported products. And this is quite important. This is becoming more critical because of the EU carbon border adjustment mechanism levies that are to be imposed on South African exported goods or manufactured products. And this levy will compel manufacturers to comply with EU standards, which is a major risk to the sectoral sustainability. The industry master plans, aluminium, steel, automotive, provide some framework and guidance for greening the sector and implementation of circular economy. This presents opportunities for local manufacturers to grow sustainable businesses and comply with CBAM requirements. But looking at the extent of the challenge, it's quite demanding, and the sector is really going to have to put in a lot of effort to try and overcome these CBAM constraints. The graph on the right just emphasizes the fact, if you look on the bottom axis, the carbon intensity of gross exports in tons CO2 per year, per US dollars, in millions of US dollars. You'll see South Africa in the middle there, on the extreme right, is an outlier. So we're quite inefficient in the way we use energy and the type of value addition we make to our resources. There's a couple of slides which contain comments or extracts from articles in the news, most recent, July, September 2024. And these talk to CBAM impacts or pending impacts on sectoral growth and sustainability. The head of the PMO office, Presidential Office, Project Management Office, Rudy Dix, stating here that the industry has to adapt to CBAM requirements or lose exports to the EU market. This serves as a benchmark for domestic production. If we don't deal with this, he reckons by 2035 we can forget about exporting to the EU market, which is quite a foreboding thought. South Africa's total exports would then decline by 2050 if more EU countries adopted the CBAM approach. Importantly, he stresses that it's not the role of government or the presidency to take over implementation, but merely to support and facilitate and coordinate in terms of the implementation of circular economy or any measures to counter this. Kalo of Tips, well-known analyst, he reckons the industries such as iron, steel, aluminium, cement, including hydrogen economy and electricity, will be affected. And the transition to a sustainable development pathway cuts across all spheres of government and policy, with implications on the composition and dynamics of entire value chains. And this has a bearing on competitiveness, trade performance, etc. for the sector. Moving on, the head of environmental sustainability, Uleman, stresses that the CBAM requirements will have a major impact on Uleman. Quite a lot of their products need to comply with the specifications or the reporting requirements. And importantly, this requires, he states, the energy consumption and source of material inputs for each ingot produced and each coil produced to be measured individually at each process step to ensure accurate reporting for export customers, which is a tremendous task. So tracking of these inputs and energy consumption across more than 50 processes and doing that accurately presents quite a challenge. It also requires an investment in infrastructure, monitoring systems, sensors, etc., to enable live tracking. Further on, note the bottom section cutting out. Deepak Patel, head of finance and innovation at the PCC, also stresses the looming negative impacts of the CBAM levies on South African exports and decline in the sectoral revenues and growth. If you look at the steel master plan, industry master plan from the circular economy point of view, this slide outlines some of the key points from the plan that talk to greening of the economy and implementation of circular economy processes and principles. The key thing here is that the burden of complying with these CBAM requirements or environmental laws is greater for auto OEMs. And that's significant because that's one of the main industries within the manufacturing sector, one of the major contributors in terms of jobs and GDP. We need to improve competitiveness, and there needs to be revitalizing investments. This applies to foundries and smelters, which form a very significant part of our mining and metals industry. Importantly, the plan proposes that the industry agree to a target for carbon neutrality by 2050. And this requires then the conversion to renewable energy sources and upgrading and further development in terms of the processes, the technological processes being used within the industry. For those who are not familiar, the NCPC is hosted under the CSR National Cleaner Production Center, funded by the DTIC. And it runs projects to support the local foundry industry. Importantly, I just wanted to emphasize the importance of scrap to the steel industry. I think this is not well appreciated and thought to be something low level. It's perhaps taken for granted at times. But if you look within the EU, as I'll show in the next few slides, scrap is a very, very significant part of the steel economy. This graph shows how crucial it is to reducing CO2 emissions in the EU. There's different sources of scrap which are tracked and used accordingly, with positive, net effects on the overall greenhouse gas emissions from the industry or from the sector. So this is something I think we need to take more account of within South Africa. The control of scrap is captured in the master plans. The importance of that is noted. There are bans now on scrap, the controls on scrap exports and so forth. It's also important to recognize that the availability of scrap is limited. And this is something we need to keep in mind. So in the EU, again, using that as a reference, steel is considered fundamental to the circular economy. It's 100% recyclable. Almost half of the steel produced in the EU comes from recovered secondary sources. Because of its longevity, scrap is not readily available or insufficient. So primary steel manufacturing remains quite important or crucial to the economy, which means resource extraction, etc., for primary steel making has to continue. Because of rising demand projected up to 2050 and beyond, primary steel production will continue to play an important role. It's important to note both primary and secondary production routes are complementary and interdependent, and they have fundamental roles in the circular economy. Steel production is almost occurs in a closed loop system. And interestingly or importantly, there are advanced high-strength steels which have been developed, which can help reduce weight and mitigate greenhouse gas emissions, particularly in passenger vehicles and automotive, as well as other transportation sectors. Moving on to the South African Aluminium Industry Master Plan. This was sort of launched around May 2024. 24 institutions, companies participated under the guidance of a consulting company, and they came up with this master plan, which I think eventually will be put out in a more formal document. I'll get to the objectives of the master plan, but I just wanted to share a snapshot of the aluminium industry. On the left, you see the increase in aluminium price over a period of about 10 or more years. Importantly, aluminium is quite significant when it comes to CO2 emissions. It's overshadowed by titanium and magnesium, which don't feature very strongly in our economy because we don't produce those as primary metals. Energy use in production of aluminium in the African context tends to be higher or has increased above global energy use, pointing to inefficiencies. Importantly, in the bottom left, this projects the estimated impact of CBAM levies and requirements or restrictions on exports from South Africa in various sectors, chemicals, iron and steel. And unfortunately, this will have quite a negative effect on the economy once it's implemented. So the aluminium industry roadmap, vision and pillars stated here. The main thing is to, again, as with other master plans, develop a competitive industry, expand the markets, create employment, and so forth. But importantly, achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. And this will be done, the goal is to reduce scope 1 and 2 emissions, increase domestic consumption of virgin and recycled material, maintain access to key export markets, which will demand that we achieve carbon neutrality or reduce emissions to the right levels to ensure we comply with CBAM requirements. There are various pillars, recycling. There's a push to enhance domestic recycling plant capacity for obvious reasons. Downstream component production can help mitigate emissions and make the industry more competitive. Policy, trade, and domestic, very important for dealing with the impending or looming trade restrictions, CBAM, and so forth, and then energy and greening of the industry, carbon neutrality by 2050, renewable energy in the production of aluminium components, and so forth. And R&D, very important as well, continuing that to support the industry. The next section, I'd like to look at circular economy interventions and opportunities. And this will focus on the Greenhouse Gas Observatory development for the South African foundry sector. The Greenhouse Gas Observatory concept or methodology, if you like, or approach is can be more widely applied, as the slides will show. So the foundries operate in a very energy-intensive arena and contribute to Scope 1 and Scope 2 greenhouse gas emissions in South Africa. The Greenhouse Data Observatory can help to track emissions from these foundries and resource management as well, and allow decision-making in terms of business and emissions and resource efficiencies, etc. Importantly, this can promote sustainable resource management and optimize waste management in a circular economy context. It will require big data and monitoring systems, IoT sensors, energy meters, etc., which feed into the observatory, and this can help track carbon footprints. And the link is to a circular economy where any kind of resource can be tracked and also map out resource flows and identify points where materials can be recovered, recycled, or reused. I won't go into the other details. People can look at these slides and inform their thinking, and hopefully this will spur more discussion. But the bottom part talks to various opportunities presented by the Data Observatory approach. Firstly, providing CBAM reporting tools for exporters. It's a critical one. Via the observatory, this process can be eased or speeded up and made much more effective in support of the sector. Knowledge for decision-making, opportunities to expand in terms of scope and scale for businesses, and developing a trusted digital inventory on greenhouse gas emissions within the foundry sector, which is quite very important in terms of credibility with customers in the export markets. This is just a model showing the layout of the observatory, the different layers. Apologies for that. Starting from 1 at the bottom where we capture data, 2 using blockchain collection platform, 3 the data lake where data is pooled from different sources, data management at level 4, and then level 5 after processing, analyzing, AI machine learning type approaches to generate actionable insight and knowledge which can inform the industry and the sector as a whole. And this can be applied to other industries within the sector and other mining, etc., agriculture, and so forth.
Dr. Pasladen, sorry to
Yes.
interrupt you, but yeah, I'm going to need to ask you to wrap up. I'm so
Sure.
sorry.
No problem.
Yeah,
How much
we
time do I have
we need
left?
to meet.
No
So
time.
but everyone will get the copy of the slides afterwards.
Sure.
And please do keep your questions for Dr. Pasladen for
Sure. I'll just talk
okay.
quickly to the
Thank you
slide
so much.
people,
Yeah.
just to guide people to. So these are the objectives of setting up the observatory for the South African foundry sector. A lot of these talk to the circular economy and dealing with the emissions. This provides more insight into the data observatory for greenhouse gas and resource monitoring within a circular economy context. And this talks to challenges for greenhouse gas monitoring in South Africa, and talks to the type of constraints you might face and need to be addressed. The last section deals with automotive sector, renewable energy technologies, This slide shows our circular economy intervention similar to the aluminium, cement, steel industry interventions, how this can have a positive effect on greenhouse gas emissions within the automotive sector. This includes circular business models, which can also then help mitigate greenhouse gas emissions. Recycling of lithium-ion batteries, this is a very hot topic. There's lots of studies on this, included a bit on this, just to contextualize it and talk to some of the opportunities within the South African context. Renewable energy tech, these are global stats. But the key thing is here that, you know, these technologies, the use of them, there's massive growth in these technologies and the deployment, and in the medium to long term, the recycling and recovering materials from these technologies or these systems, materials, components, etc., will become is already, you know, very important, but will become increasingly important due to the scale at which these are being deployed. And this presents an opportunity for South Africa as well, where particularly photovoltaics are being deployed at quite a massive scale. Project of interest to CSR is repurposing of aluminium alloys as opposed to recycling. Effectively, this talks to upgrading of material which might end up as scrap or in-process material, upgrading of that to form high-grade alloys and you know, achieve more value out of production material. This is a project we're running with Unilever, which is quite interesting. These are the conclusions. I think they're self-explanatory. People can read through them. I think the key thing is here that the looming CBAM levy to be imposed are going to have quite a massive impact on the sector. And I think the sector needs to respond accordingly. And the monitoring and reporting of greenhouse gas emissions accurately and efficiently is going to become increasingly important. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I really do apologize for interrupting, because I think we could have listened to that for a lot, and you could just see the amount of knowledge and yeah, what you have brought. So thank you so much again for your time and for being here. Without any further ado, and I'm just going to ask Lee to start getting himself ready while I introduce him, and he can share his screen in the meantime. I'd like to introduce Lee Hendel-Reuters, and he is from the National Cleaner Production Center, and he's the manager of the strategy and innovation. As part of the NCPC SA management team, he's responsible for business strategy, innovation, and policy initiatives related to resource efficiency, SEP aimed at supporting the strategic objectives and mandate of the centre. He represents the NCPC SA in various national platforms and international partnerships. In this respect, he leads the centre's strategic initiatives on eco-industrial parks, circular economy, eco-innovation, sustainable finance, sector decarbonisation, and Africa regional collaboration on SCP mainstreaming and support to SMEs. So Lee, I'd like to hand over to you, and I look forward to your presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sally, and good afternoon, colleagues. And also thank you to our CSR colleague for sharing a very insightful presentation. So I will try to compress my slides or my presentation into about 15 minutes, but hopefully you'll be able to see and receive the slides afterwards, of course. So yeah, my presentation will touch on how the NCPC fosters sustainable and circular manufacturing in South Africa, and more specifically reflect a bit on how through our resource efficient and cleaner production approach, we have supported industry or the manufacturing industry and have also now started moving towards supporting circularity through expanding and through introducing new approaches based on resource efficient and cleaner production and sustainable consumption and production. So my slides will cover just briefly what we do as the NCPC. I'll touch on RECP and how we have seen and experienced industry learnings through the lens of sustainable development goals. And then lastly, I'll touch on what we are doing to support the implementation of resource efficient or interventions, circular economy interventions, and sustainability interventions at the manufacturing level. So just firstly, to give you a bit of a background about the NCPC, we are a national program funded by the DTIC, Department of Trade and Industry. We are hosted at the CSIR, and our mandate is to support the transition of South African manufacturing industry to a green economy through the application of the broad principles of resource efficient and cleaner production. We were established just over 20 years ago by UNIDO, United Nations Industrial Development Organization, and we have been operating and have gone through various phases of our organizational life cycle, and have gone through a few phases to be where we are today after 20 years, particularly starting out looking at awareness raising and applying resource efficiency and cleaner production, or RECP, as a continuous application for preventative environmental strategies, focusing on processes, products, and services to increase efficiency within manufacturing businesses. Our strategic objectives: we support industry to transition to a green economy. We develop local skills and capacity. We create awareness raising and information, particularly with regards to tools and guides that industry can use to adopt resource efficiency, and other methodologies and approaches that we develop. We have a service bouquet, a range of services that we offer to the manufacturing industry. These services are funded through the DTIC, either at a no cost or low cost basis. And also we provide our services to industry through donor funded projects, either from facilitated through UNIDO or UNEP, United Nations Environmental Program, or other donor projects or funders. Just well, to give you an idea of those services, firstly, we support industry through our in-plant assessments to identify opportunities to save energy, water, and materials. This is an important part of RECP and underpins the concept of continuous application of the preventative environmental strategies. This approach is quite critical also to assist industry to reduce the amount of pollution and waste that they generate. It also reduces threats of risk for the population of society and environment. And we've done this over the past few years with an approach to particularly look at training and coaching national experts in RECP methodologies or methods, different applications and specialized resource efficiency topics. Of course, raising awareness, improving the understanding of how RECP and circular economy practices can benefit SMEs within the manufacturing sector is a core part of our service offerings. And of course, the intention and the aim is for these practices, for these different services to lead to improved productivity and environmental performance. We have in the past, the last few years, we've started adding services, particularly to assist industry to redirect waste through industrial symbiosis, assisting with developing business cases for funding, not just energy, but also other green financing, and also developing tools, baselines, developing different cases, guidelines that can assist with carbon reporting that companies have to comply with. Just in terms of our projects and our programs, we have quite a number of projects, and our core services and projects covers water, energy, and waste materials through our industrial symbiosis program, partnership with 9 provinces. Eco-industrial parks is another area that or approach that we have adopted in the NCPC. Of course, also green finance, supporting industry or manufacturing businesses to access finance and to create financial linkages for them to implement and execute these savings and efficiency opportunities. We've started also to look at circularity within the services that we offer, looking at sector decarbonization and looking at how we take and address issues of circularity that companies can adopt. Skills development, of course, is an important part of what we do, as well as our RECP internship program. Some of our donor-funded projects includes quite an extensive focus on industrial spaces. We're looking at energy systems in industrial spaces. We also have a project currently where we look at strengthening adaptation capacity for a green and resilient economy. Also, the Global Eco-Industrial Parks program, which is one of our bigger programs in the center, promoting circular economy in the textiles and garment sector through sustainable chemicals and waste management. And these are all projects and programs that aims to support RECP, or at least the platform of RECP that we have built in manufacturing to support the adoption of circularity and the circular principles. Just briefly, in terms of our identified savings since 2015, in terms of the companies that we've worked with across energy, water, and materials, just over 1,000 companies. In terms of resource savings realized, and I think this is where we have over the past 10 years particularly put a focus on, and looking at how do we convert potential savings into realized or actual savings. And mainly through our industrial energy efficiency project, we've seen realized savings of over 5 billion rand. and for water, focused on our industrial water efficiency project, and also through our industrial symbiosis program activities, we've seen savings being realized at companies. We contribute, of course, to again the adoption of circularity through training that we offer. Our training courses, and especially our recent training courses on our RECP expert level, is particularly focused on getting industry to understand circularity and circular economy. And within this, the RECP approach aims to facilitate the shift for industry towards circular economy, promoting waste prevention as an important priority and a first priority. It looks at preparing enterprises to reuse certain residues, reintroducing remaining into the product value chain. Of course, we are also focusing on mapping certain wastes within the different value chains that we have been working with and supporting, whether it's through the textiles, automotive, as well as the agro-processing, and the other one is also on pulp and paper. We have been aiming to map waste and assessing the waste is generated by manufacturing companies, evaluating the relevant waste management services, identifying opportunities, and to introduce circular economy practices like remanufacturing, recycling, and industrial symbiosis. And so the aim of this expert level and the training is to capture all of those different concepts and to assist industry to adopt and to start to transition towards circularity in their business operations. We have, of course, since COVID, also adopted our training online. So on our website, all of our training is offered, and the different dates for it as well. This is just the training development impact. This is all our guidelines and our tools on the various sectors, sector guides for textile sector, clothing sector, life cycle management tools, and other sectors and sustainability journeys. On industrial park, eco-industrial parks, a number of guides and tools that's been developed through the EIP team, and through the Global Eco-Industrial Parks program, and also through partnerships with the DTIC and with GIZ, and a number of these guides are available on our website to be used. So just to briefly touch on our RECP learnings and experiences, well, this is just some background on how RECP came about, but across a number of SDGs, RECP is quite an important approach, and it's quite an important, from our perspective, quite an important tool to use. In terms of water, which is a focus area for us, industrial users of water drive efficiency and build mechanisms for RECP through technology innovation. There's opportunity to address water losses in the agro-processing sector. We've developed guidelines, and also when it comes to RECP tools, to encourage industry specifically on measurements, monitoring, and making sure that they understand the consumption and the consumption of water and how to address that. In terms of clean energy, of course, our industrial energy efficiency project and the savings it has achieved over a period of about 10 years and continuing has been quite an important part of the RECP approach. We've established a number of partnerships, developed a lot of training dedicated to energy. We have facilitated quite a number of financial incentives and continue to support industry with our energy efficiency assessment services. In terms of decent work and economic growth, of course, this is the basis for why we use RECP, and the importance of RECP to improve competitiveness in industry is a key focus for the NCPC, and of course the impact that it has on issues of productivity and job retention. The potential for that is quite important for us to also look into. In terms of innovation, industry and infrastructure, I've mentioned eco-industrial park methodology and the number of tools we developed, looking at industrial park revitalization, partnering with UNIDO, DTIC and Jeff on a number of projects relating to industrial parks is a key focus in addressing and using RECP in this context. Also, when it comes to other sectors like textiles, I've mentioned textiles earlier, facilitating circular textiles through projects or programs like the circular economy in the garment and textile sector, which has a focus on chemicals and pollution. Also, another project called UNEP Intex project, focusing on product environmental footprint and eco-innovation business models to support the textile industry to adopt circular principles. This is strongly aligned to the CTFL master plan, and a number of policy gap analysis exercises have been done in this sector. And then just facilitating the adoption and use of responsible manufacturing techniques is an important part of our advisory support to industry. And lastly, we've also done an exercise with the CSIR on looking at how to harmonize the product environmental footprint and LCA requirements into a guideline. I think lastly on responsible consumption and production, again, RECP in the context for it is also about supporting and driving decoupling of economic growth from natural resources or increased use of natural resources. And this is also done through a number of projects and activities like industrial symbiosis and the Global Eco-Industrial Parks Program. I think lastly, before I go to the green finance, which I'll flip through very quickly, we, I mean, the focus on eco-industrial parks is quite an important focus for the NCPC. This diagram indicates how this concept of eco-industrial parks contributes to circular economy and the different approaches, including the different, not just the different approaches, but the different activities when supporting industrial spaces to transition to eco-industrial park is covered not just by RECP and industrial synergies, but also looking at issues of managing of industrial parks supporting tenants, providing infrastructure services, looking at recycling facilities, and using this concept of EIP to facilitate urban industrial symbiosis. So through the EIP approach, there's a important focus on how to use it to facilitate transition to a circular economy. So lastly, on green finance, we have over the past 10 or so years looked at how do we, when we have done all of this awareness raising, assessments, supporting and advising the manufacturing businesses, how do we take them further, identifying opportunities, and how do we assist them going further to access finance. And through our approach, we've developed a program based on a project called RECP, RECP Finance. It was implemented around 2018 by UNIDO, and this was to identify different mechanisms for green projects. The objectives was simply to raise awareness on investment mechanism that's available, accelerating access to investment and project funding through creating linkages or financial linkages, as we call it, but also providing capacity building workshops and training to assist SMEs to develop bankable proposals, and supporting giving them technical support for project readiness through different tools that we develop. In terms of drivers and barriers, I think this is something that a lot of people are aware of, and we've heard about issues related to CBAM. There's a number of barriers that businesses that stops businesses, or that creates a barrier for businesses to actually access finance. And we hope to improve that through our different interventions, which, as I mentioned, looks at awareness raising and technical support, financial matchmaking, and also looking at different tools that can be used. Just briefly, some highlights.
Sorry, Lee.
Yes.
Apologies for interjecting. Please, could you wrap up? We are now heading over time again.
Yes.
So if you wouldn't mind, maybe just concluding.
I think this is my second last slide.
Thank you.
This is my second last slide. So, so this is just the highlights of our project or the program. This is our tool, our financier database, and that is to assist business to identify the correct financing institution for their projects. And this is our tool that we developed for assisting with businesses. Yeah, I think that is it from my side. I have put into the chat box a link to the presentations and recordings from our industrial efficiency conference that took place exactly a month ago. And there you'll find updated or recent presentations on eco-industrial parks, green finance, all the different projects that we have. And I'm sure you'll find a lot of value in those presentations as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Thanks very much. And there are a few questions directed in your direction. So if you wouldn't mind having a look at the chat and seeing if you could answer a couple of those. Without any further ado, I'm going to invite Dr. Anthony Gewer. And Anthony, you can please start sharing your screen while I introduce you. So Dr. Anthony Gewer has for the past 24 years provided strategic and technical support to government, donors, industry and institutions around strengthening pathways for successful labour market transitions. During this time, he has worked with leading development organisations to demonstrate innovative, solutions to skills and employment promotion for marginalized youth and adults. For the past 7 years, he has designed and implemented a large-scale program to grow demand for artisanal industries and township contexts through market development, growth of enterprises, and demand-led skilling. He's currently a senior program manager in the economic inclusion at the National Business Initiative in South Africa, responsible for programs to support more inclusive growth of skills and employment creation, particularly in township economy and the context of a just transition. And the reason why we've staggered these presentations in the way we have was to go from a macro level and a holistic picture of South Africa, moving into some really practical implementation of the RECP, and now with Dr. Gure at the smaller micro level and on the ground, hands-on environment. So Dr. Gure, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to try and I think I'm now at the graveyard shift, so I'm going to try and move as quickly as possible to see if we can still free up some time for discussion. Thank you very much for inviting me today, and try and give you a snapshot of what we're trying to achieve in our work to unlock the potential, particularly of the township economy, to create jobs in what we call IRM industries, or installation, repair and maintenance industries. And these refer to artisanal skills, the use of artisanal skills to either install, repair or maintain equipment, machinery, infrastructure, to produce products that can be taken to the market, that are functional, that are innovative, and are produced partly or entirely by hand. And then particularly relevant to our discussion today, the manufacturing and maintenance of resource efficiency solutions. So we cut across three, obviously there's the three key areas of resource efficiency and energy, well, the just transition, but we also target three broad industry focus areas, can't call them sectors, in focus areas in our work, being property and infrastructure maintenance, light manufacturing, and then devices, equipment, and machinery. And each of these cuts across all three areas of the just transition and our challenges in terms of climate change. So while the circular economy applies across all of these, we are trying to now say, how do we particularly unlock and identify opportunities where township businesses in particular can participate in these value chains? So if we look at each of these value chains, and you can either look at them horizontally or vertically, if we look at any of these value chains, where are the opportunities for enterprise interventions or enterprise support? Where are the opportunities for enterprise growth, for entrepreneurial growth, and what are the skills and what are the support that are needed to unlock those? So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're trying to do that, and how the program that we are, what have we learned to date in terms of the types of businesses that we're working with. So we take a multi-layered approach. We have these industry working groups and industry partnerships where we're trying to understand the occupations and the skills across the value chains. And yes, we know that many of these value chains are linear. So how do we start to understand within each of those linear value chains where the opportunities for circularity are? What are the kinds of jobs, whether they're direct or indirect, that we can create? And that includes through growing businesses, because businesses at the end of the day create jobs. How do we identify enablers and constraints to unlock this demand? And how do we address those? And then building the kind of practical solutions to realize these at local levels within particular localities, geographic localities in which we are operating, and I'll talk to what we're doing. But effectively, we look at it we take a very place-based approach. We're trying to understand at a very local, granular level, where are those opportunities, so we can build out those value chains locally, because the opportunities are invariably going to be localized when you are looking at township economy, and the surrounding industries and the surrounding markets that exist. So we need to grow them locally, and then they can build out from there. But so that means concentrating your energies into those local ecosystems and trying to build the capacity of those local ecosystems to support enterprises to grow and to support the creation of demand. So we do that through establishment of hubs. We're working with TVET colleges across various parts of the country, establishing what we call skills and entrepreneurship hubs. And the whole idea is to say, while we are trying to, while we still recognize that the formal economy has a role to play in unlocking, in creating jobs, particularly in SMEs, those workplaces are limited. We know that they're not labor absorbing. So we need to be able to expand the number of workplaces that can create jobs out there. And that's where we find these township businesses and particularly these artisanal SMEs. So we have this, we're building these hubs, as I indicated, 13 township hubs on TVET college campuses, supporting as many township businesses as we can to grow and create increased market opportunities. And we do that because we want to make them into job creators. So we want to be able to expand the number of workplaces in township communities that can train and employ young people, so that we can support young people to transition into those, and young people don't have to go outside of their townships to find these opportunities. We also want to identify, as we are training young people, those that have entrepreneurial potential that we can take on an entrepreneurship growth path, so that they become future job creators. And this is the work that our hubs will do. And our hubs have 4 key components to it. It's about market linkages, linking to local procurement, creating market access, acting as an aggregator for market opportunities, accelerating existing artisanal entrepreneurs in those townships, making sure that they become, they get on a sustainable growth path, but that they become workplaces that can train and employ young people, matching young people into these workplaces, be they in the formal sector or in the informal economy or township economy, making sure that the skills that are being produced through these colleges are geared towards those, that they're flexible, and that these SMEs become workplaces that provide workplace learning. It's the biggest component in supporting a young person's transition, is not just about skills, because skills don't create jobs. If we don't get them into the labor market, they don't transition, and they just become part of the needs. So, and then as we're doing that, we're identifying high potential young entrepreneurs and helping them to self-employ. And it's really about supporting the entrepreneurial journey, doing all of these sorts of things through the hubs, right, that we are creating. The beauty about these hubs is that they're green buildings themselves. They're built very much on sustainable practices, building practices. We're working with the Green Building Council, and the whole idea is that they become models of what green infrastructure should look like, what green buildings should look like for these township businesses, because we want township artisanal SMEs to be able to aspire to be able to use that kind of technology, to use these kinds of technologies in the work that they do. But more importantly, what happens in that hub, from a production point of view, is that these SMEs need to be able to use resource efficiency principles, one, obviously in the way that they practice their craft, right? But two, in the way that they produce goods, products. So how do they use materials more sustainably? And that's a design feature. So how do we, and each of these hubs has a makerspace, which is technology, a digital lab where they can, they can design and do product development and prototyping of products using 3D printing and the like. And in that design is being able to factor in how those products are going to be sustainable, but also in the actual, then taking that one step further in terms of the use of other equipment to either produce, through wood, through metal, through electronics or electrical, whatever it is, how are they using their skills that they're developing to produce products that can be more sustainable and can also support sustainability, Right? So we have the kinds of solutions that they're coming up with are more resource efficient, but also support resource efficiency in one way or another. And then on top of that is making sure, particularly in the way that we're using waste to produce more products, so whether it's through clothing and textile, whether it's through electronic waste, appliances, various sorts of electronic devices, whether they're mobile devices or other electronic goods. How are you using that material to either reuse or recycle or and put back into the market in some form or another? But with all of this, is the key thing is establishing an ecosystem that can enable these businesses to grow. As I've indicated, it's about unlocking demand, and it's about strengthening the support to these SMEs to make sure that they are able to get on that growth path. And the role of the hub is to provide intermediation between the two. It's not the only intermediary in the local ecosystem. You have to work in partnership. It's not an island, but it becomes a critical intermediary between the market opportunities in these corporate value chains, in these government value chains, in the domestic market. It unlocks those and it links the SMEs to those markets. But we need to make sure that those SMEs are geared up to deliver on that. So if we're producing products for these markets, are those products up to scratch? Are they of sufficient quality? Are they produced at the right sort of cost? Are they produced on time and in the right scale? So I'm going to just talk a little bit about some of the businesses and this is based on work that my colleagues Abigail and Lula Miller have done in trying to understand the SMEs that we are targeting and working with. Not all of these SMEs have been through our hubs per se, but they give an illustration of the types of SMEs that we're trying to work with that are operating in these townships in the circular economy. Obviously, the first one is not necessarily a circular business, but still working very much in the green, in the renewable energy industry. And some of them, all of them started, many of them had a business already that they had started and were then supported to pivot to become green businesses. Some of them were green from the outset. So something like the guys who were collecting waste and using it they were not necessarily using it to recycle, but they were just that we could convert their business into something that was more geared up for circularity. And each of these had been through some kind of green incubator program and had identified through these green incubator programs opportunities in the circular economy that they could engage with. Others had built off their own knowledge, their own indigenous knowledge or traditional knowledge that they'd gathered through generations, passed down from their families in terms of how to use particular plant extracts to produce soaps, or etc., or whatever it is. So it's a combination of factors that these initially these aspiring entrepreneurs have found solutions, and have started to through some support, either particularly through an incubator type program, have been able to now turn this into a viable business, right? But they reach a limit. They reach a point at which that incubator can only take them so far, or the work that these incubators are doing can only take them so far. And this is where the issue of sustainability and growth and job creation becomes critical. Because yes, they would have received some startup capital, they would have received some basic enterprise development, some already had an operational business. But as they're starting to grow and scale, they get increased pressure on their operations. And they require a whole lot of further technical expertise. And this is where the difficulty sets in, because finding that technical expertise as these businesses evolve, as the technology evolves, as the complexity of the products that they're producing evolves, the level of technical expertise that they need and input that they need becomes increasingly difficult to find and to fund. because the incubators only go to a certain level, and then it's got to be handed, someone else has to take over to provide that support. And this is where our hubs now can kick in. That's why we put these hubs at public institutions, public TVET institutions, because we want them to be publicly available, and we want them to be able to provide the support at an affordable and accessible basis, and we want them to be sustainable, because these are public institutions, they can be funded on a sustainable basis. It also means that these businesses need an increasingly skilled workforce, and I think that's another role that that these colleges play. And we would not recognize that colleges are not all at the same level, and there are some that are really good, and there are some that are relatively not so good. But we are working with colleges that are self-selecting into the program and demonstrating the commitment to these. So this is a lot of money that's going into infrastructure, but we're walking the journey with these colleges over a 6 to 7 year period to make sure that these hubs are sustainable and to make sure that they have the capacity to deliver the skills, entrepreneurship, acceleration capacity that's needed. So the colleges play a critical role in complementing the work that we're doing to grow the enterprises with the kind of skills, upskilling and reskilling or topping up of skills in one another, as well as skilling of young people, skilling of the workers in these SMEs, skilling of young people and transitioning them into the. It's really important that we are able to make these businesses become viable spaces for learning and growth of young people, of the workforce. And they need to be recognized programs that are going to get people on a pathway to something. So we really do believe, and so I've rushed through this because I wanted to give some time. So we really do believe that you can identify township-based artisanal entrepreneurs that can pivot and access opportunities in the circular economy. But to support these businesses, we need to follow their growth journey and adapt to their evolving needs over time, so that we make that growth sustainable. And that means working with, in partnership with various technical experts in the area, in the ecosystem that come from various, so we're working with SRI, and so I see Suzanne was on the call, on the meeting, and others who can bring various types of technical expertise to the table. We're working with the PROs, working with the various entities in the ecosystem that can support these businesses and crowd in that support through the hub to make sure that these businesses are constantly on a growth path, and that the kind of support that needs to get them there to make them sustainable is consistent. That has to be, we have to focus on enterprise development. We have to develop the technical skills, and the issues of market access are critical. We're setting up simulated environments in these hubs that can, for example, particularly on the e-waste side, on clothing and textile waste, recycling and reuse, so appliances and electronics and mobile devices, clothing and textiles, and other sorts of things, including recycling of solar panels and the like. How do we build within these hubs the kind of environments that are conducive so that SMEs are able to actively engage in opportunities that emerge? But there's a range of businesses. I've just shown you a few, but there are so many interesting businesses that we found out there that are really keen on the support, that really value the support and are willing to work that journey with us, right? And as they grow, we have to be able to then grow with them. There's a final key thing that I wanted to emphasize, is the fact that the biggest challenge that many of these businesses face is that they reach a ceiling in terms of their manufacturing space. So manufacturing space, we know in townships is really good, is really difficult. Townships were not established to be manufacturing environments. And industrial parks, as we know, are also difficult. And I see Bernd has dropped off. I don't get to put him on the spot. But the fact is that we know that many of our hubs are nearby industrial estates. We know that industrial estates, for example, are quite difficult in terms of giving access for SMEs to space that's well serviced, that's well looked after, that's affordable, etc. So once they outgrow their own initial space, they need affordable and conducive industrial space for them to grow these businesses, as well as shared services that are needed. So if I had to say, where should we be putting our efforts, right, besides the issue of identifying these entrepreneurs and supporting these entrepreneurs from an enterprise and a skills development point of view, the issue around infrastructure and how are we going to grow these manufacturing businesses in a way that's sustainable, where we don't have to put them into spaces that are going to cost them too much money, that are going to be too far away from where their operations are, and that's going to then ultimately not be enable them to sustain that production facility. So I'm going to stop there. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Anthony. I really appreciate you rushing through your presentation as well. But lots of very valuable information in there. And I think many people will probably engage with you after this presentation as well. So thank you very much for your time. Katerina, can we have a look at the whiteboard? We've got 8 minutes left according to the webinar. And I think, it's definitely not enough time to get into anything and any very meaningful discussion, and I apologize for that. But if you can have a look at your board, Katerina, can I just quickly hand over to you so you can explain and take us through the whiteboard?
Perfect. Thanks, Sally, and thanks for everyone also staying online with us. But I do think we have got some really interesting content. So you should see the whiteboard in front of you. I'm going to stop making you follow me so that you can cruise around freely on the whiteboard as well. So what we really want to find out is, okay, I see people are already moving post-its around. So you see in green and the orange and the blues, the different questions that we've actually posed, and we would invite everyone to fill those in, obviously with very limited time available. So we are looking at, for example, what are the key opportunities in designing manufacturing processes that minimize waste and pollution? And then we are also looking at the regulatory barriers that we're seeing. There were some interesting comments also in the chat around upfront investment. That's definitely a barrier that has been raised quite a few times already. So I think this is something that we can add to the whiteboard. So I think there's not much more to explain. You can literally click on a post-it and then start typing. Maybe the only thing to know is that if you want to grab and move the whiteboard, is just on the bottom right-hand side. You can zoom in and out. And then if you unclick that little hand, you can also start typing into the post-it.
Great. So maybe have a look at the questions and see which one has a burning answer for yourself, and focus on that one so we can get your thoughts on paper. Yeah, we've got a few minutes. Are there any? Is there anyone that wants to ask any of our speakers a question while people are filling in or providing some feedback on the whiteboard? It's great. I'm really enjoying seeing some of those post-its getting filled in already. That's excellent. So just maybe a question with regards to the hubs and the fact that at the hubs there is a makerspace type environment. So there are tools, etc., Anthony, available for people to use. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, sorry. Yes, no, definitely. So we're creating we want to be able to provide the kind of equipment that they might not have in their facility, in their backyard, or wherever they're operating. So they can come there, they can use the equipment, obviously, can come with their bakkie, they can come there with their material, use the equipment, take it, and it's publicly accessible. Obviously, we have to manage how that happens, but we also have incubation facilities at the hub for startups that can operate there for a period of time until they're ready to move out into a new industrial space.
That's great, thank you. Nselo, I see your hand. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Sally. From a medical point of view, I found myself, it's like I'm on the deep end. There was a lot to chew. I'm just wondering if the programs that are there are also accommodating the medical space. In as much as we're in the medical space, half of what I do, if not almost 70%, is also manufacturing. And there is an appetite towards digital manufacturing, which is 3D printing. I was just wondering if the medical space is something which is in line with some of the programs that are probably providing green finance and all of that. That is my question. And also, maybe also a point of guidance in terms of circularity in the medical assistive devices. 91% of the medical devices in South Africa are imports, specifically medical devices. And those devices are classified as single use. Now, there's a law which also indicates that those devices should not be reprocessed. Now, all those statements are in line with the linear economy. Now, for me, that feels like it's a huge stumbling block towards taking assistive devices to the circular economy. So the question then could be, what could be the starting point in transitioning towards circular economy from the medical assistive devices point of view?
Thank you. A massive question, and I'm not sure we're going to be able to get to answer that, because I think it's such a big question that we should definitely we're going to record it in these notes, and probably for a bigger discussion around medical devices, the classification in terms of single use, and probably I don't know if there's anybody else on the call who's in that field.
Maybe,
but
Sally, I
we
can
don't-
mention something
Yep.
to that, to medical devices. So
Yep.
maybe what you could do is connect with the University of Johannesburg, the Process, Energy and Environmental Technology Station, because back during COVID, we had a massive project with Mesita and other higher education institutions to actually develop a ventilator, because obviously due to COVID, we were very much dependent, as you mentioned, to the global north imports, to actually have a ventilator that can be built through 3D printing. So actually making those technologies more accessible to the African market, but they're massive, massive barriers. And obviously there's a chance for South Africa to also work in that field more and to position itself for the African continent more strategically. But I would recommend you to connect with them around that. The bigger OEMs like Philips, they have actually started also with programs where you can trade in old ventilators, old MRI machines. But what we have seen, especially in the public sector, is that a lot of the equipment isn't digitalized. So a lot of times you have an incubator for a baby where just a lamp needs to be switched out, but they literally can't actually register it in the system. So that's where, unfortunately, the equipment is being pushed aside and can't be used anymore. So there's also a case around how the equipment as such is being used within the different hospitals, or especially in the private sector. So there are quite a few challenges that we're seeing in the sector. But I will leave the link in the chat box just now for you. It's not a complete answer, but maybe a guide.
No, absolutely. Thanks, Katerina. We've got 1 minute left, and I am cognizant that we need to provide some closing remarks and hand over to our GIZ colleagues. So, Katerina, just to quickly ask, how is the whiteboard looking? And then I'll take Shahid's hand, but then I think we do need to close.
Yeah, I think we can close the whiteboard, to be honest, and maybe Shahid can speak, because we do have some answers which also seem similar to what we've previously have actually collected around the barriers. But I think the idea is really to find the solutions for it to actually enable the sector.
Right. Awesome.
Thanks.
Shahid, final comments before we hand over. Yep.
Thanks for the privilege. In terms of Nchiro's question, we have a medical technology sort of strategy project we are running. And it's looking at localization of medical devices and so forth. So if you can get in touch with me, we can discuss further and see if there are any opportunities. Thanks.
Wonderful.
Great.
I will connect you two. So yes, I will make that introduction and connect the two of you. Thanks so much, Shahid.
Very much.
Okay. All right. I'm going to hand over to apologies, give me a sec, to Kiobakile. If you're welcome to provide the closing remarks, and apologies everybody for running over.
Thanks so much, Sally. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kiobakile Linyebi, and I'm the country advisor for the Green Economy Transformation Program that has brought to you this dialogue today. We are funded by the ICI, which is the International Climate Initiative, and also the German Ministry for Environment and Consumer Protection. So I just want to take this moment to extend gratitude to our political partner, the DFFE, to our wonderful organizer and the facilitators from ACEN, and to all our speakers for their valuable contributions and insights throughout today's dialogue. I also just want to acknowledge, I think, the incredible diversity of stakeholders who have participated in today's dialogue, no matter how late in the day it is. And I also see just from this last exercise that we have still so much more to discuss. But I think it's very clear that the circular economy offers an opportunity for us to transition to more sustainable and resilient industrial practices by minimizing waste, reusing materials, and improving efficiency. We can better redefine how value is created in the manufacturing sector. So this approach of CE not only reduces environmental impact, but it also enhances competitiveness and long-term growth. So as you note, that CE is not just an environmental imperative, it definitely is a strategy for re-industrializing our manufacturing sector. So embracing innovation and also adopting these new business models that we are developing, we can reduce our dependency off of our resources. We create new markets for manufacturing, for repair and recycling, and we definitely strengthen our local value chains. So just looking at our circular practices, we also have noted the potential for job creation, particularly in sectors like recycling, product design, even renewable energy. And we also have the opportunity to enhance workforce skills and drive a new generation of green jobs. I mean, even today, we've heard how innovation and technology will be key enablers in this transition, from manufacturing, which is advanced, to digital technologies like AI and also IoT and new material sciences. We reimagine our systems so that they become more efficient and sustainable, which definitely lays that foundation for long-term growth. But also there are challenges that we definitely have that have also been highlighted. But I think it's clear that our government, as Dr. Mokoena earlier on highlighted, that we are in the process of creating enabling environments that incentivize businesses and industries to adopt circular models. So additionally, collaboration will be key. We've got public-private partnerships, and these cross-sectoral collaborations, even this dialogue also acts as an example, which shows how we align our goals, we share our best practices, and also use these platforms to mobilize resources for large-scale implementation of CE principles. So as we look ahead, it's important that we go beyond the dialogue. We focus on concrete actions. We need to also continue raising awareness, building capacity, particularly even for SMEs, so they can adopt circular practices and thrive in this transition. Finally, we need to measure our progress. This is critical. So tracking our metrics like our material reuse rates, carbon reductions, as we've heard about that GHG data observatory from Dr. Fazluddin. And we also need to track our economic gains, because this will demonstrate how tangible of an impact CE initiatives actually bring. So in conclusion, I urge all stakeholders to continue actively embracing CE principles as part of your operational strategies. And really, each of your perspectives has enriched our discussions and deepened our understanding of the challenges and opportunities ahead. So thank you once again from the GIZ, and let's continue to engage, to share knowledge, and also just collaborate through future dialogues and initiatives to drive this meaningful change. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that wonderful closing, and Kibakele, and thank you to all the speakers who've taken the time to prepare for this presentation, and for all of you for attending and participating and staying to the bitter end, and staying over time. So thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one, which is the Energy Dialogue, and then hopefully in the in-person. So thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thanks, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.